The air is thick with laudanum and coal dust. Somewhere down a crooked alley, a woman screams, not out of pain, but from the knowledge that her pain means nothing. You are there, wrapped in a wool coat stained with soot and old blood, following the scent of carbolic acid and despair. A bell tolls in the distance, perhaps from a church or perhaps from the surgery door. Either way, it marks a passage not from life to death, but from hope to whatever lies beneath it. In this world, medicine is a gamble, and you are the wager. You step forward, your breath shallow, your pulse uncertain. Would you have survived a cure worse than the sickness? If this story unsettles your dreams or stirs your heart, tell me, could you have endured a fever in such a time? Subscribe, share, or leave a thought for the ghosts of Medicine Park. The alley breathes smoke and silence. A cat skitters past a puddle rimmed in frost. Somewhere far off, a bell tolls, not the proud clang of a church, but the dull iron groan of a hospital summoning its night. You step forward, boots scraping against cobblestone slick with the filth of 100 boot heels. The gas lamps flicker overhead like tired eyes. Their glow bleeds amber against soot-black walls. Behind a rusted gate, a boy waits, thin, nervous, and too young to carry the weight he holds. His hands shake around a leather satchel, worn at the edges and stained a dark maroon. He nods to you, without words, and leads the way. His name doesn't matter, not yet. What matters is the way he moves, hurried but resigned, as if every second burns but none are worth saving. You follow him past the meat markets, long since shuttered, their hooks swaying empty in the breeze, past the coal carts and sleeping beggars, and the long, sighing breath of the city that never truly sleeps. The building ahead looms like a mausoleum, not a place of healing, but a fortress that holds suffering inside its walls like heat in stone. You pass beneath an archway choked in ivy and dust. Inside, the world narrows. The hall is dim and cold, its stone floor damp beneath your soles. Shadows pool in corners like forgotten patience. You hear it before you see it, the low murmur of men, and the clipped rhythm of boots, the rattle of iron on iron, the slow whisper of fabric being drawn aside. And then, the smell hits you. Heather, heavy and sweet, like rotting flowers in a locked room. Beneath it, other notes. Sweat, rust, boiled linen, and something unmistakably alive. Fear. It clings to the walls. It clings to you. You step into the theatre. A half circle of benches rises around a single stained table. No velvet curtains here. No polished brass. Just splintered wood and cracked tile, and the quiet hum of dread. A man lies on the table, his chest rising and falling in shuddering gasps. His eyes dart wildly. His wrists are tied with cloth that used to be white. Around him stand 3 figures, one older, 2 young, all in aprons soaked through and aprons soaked again. Their faces are blank. Their hands are busy. The boy sits beside you in the gallery, eyes fixed forward. You ask nothing. There are no words that belong here. The surgeon steps forward. He wears no mask, no gloves. His sleeves are rolled to the elbows. His hands are stained the color of rust. He lifts a saw, not a gleaming thing from a case of fine tools, but a carpenter's blade with teeth worn blunt from use. He glances once at the patient, then at the knee swollen and blackening beneath the torn trousers. Without warning, he begins. The scream cuts through the room like a dropped scalpel. The ether was not enough. It almost never is. The man thrashes, then is held. The boy beside you flinches. You do not. You watch the blade work its path through flesh, then tendon, then bone. You hear it, the slow crunch, the slipping snap, the wet slap of blood on the floor. You hear the patient begging for something, his mother, perhaps, or God, or maybe just silence. You don't look away, because this is healing, because this is mercy. Because in this place, the only thing more dangerous than surgery is doing nothing at all. When it is done, the limb is tossed into a bucket, already half full. The wound is bound tight with linen and prayer. The surgeon steps back, eyes unfocused. He sways slightly, then nods to no one in particular. His task complete, his body trembling. The patient lives. For now. You leave the theatre, heart echoing in your chest like a second pulse. The boy says nothing, only disappears into the hallway, his satchel still clutched to his chest. like a lifeline. Outside, the fog has thickened. It swallows light and sound alike. You walk alone now, past the same butcher hooks, the same sleepers, the same indifferent moon. But you are not the same. You have seen what passes for medicine in this place. Not the polished elegance of textbooks, but the raw, red truth. A world where healing begins with harm, and the cure might maim you forever. Still, something inside you whispers, it was better than nothing. And in this time, in this city, better than nothing is often the best one can hope for. If this story leaves an ache in your chest or a question in your bones, I invite you to subscribe, to share it, or to leave a thought in the stillness below. What would you have done, seated in that gallery, with your hands clean but your soul uneasy? The door groans as it closes behind you, cutting off the fog and filth of the London street. Inside, it's no warmer. A fire snaps weakly in the hearth, throwing more shadows than heat. The room is narrow and bare, cluttered only by books stacked like bricks, and a half-drunk bottle of gin cradled beside a battered leather satchel. A man sits in the half-light, hunched over a desk, scratching notes onto yellowed parchment, with fingers stained the colour of dried cherries. This is Dr. Elias Gray. He doesn't look up. He doesn't need to. He knows you're there. He knows the sound of shoes on wet wood, the breath of a stranger in a space too small for ghosts. He keeps writing. You move closer, drawn not by politeness, but by something more compelling, something morbid. The room smells of iron and ink, of sweat, of something long dead, but not yet buried. Dr. Gray wears his coat like a second skin, dark wool, heavy with the weight of things seen and done. It hangs from his shoulders, its edges crusted in old blood, its lining stiff with salt and age. He hasn't changed since the surgery. The sawdust from the floor still clings to his cuffs. His shoes are speckled with the stories of a dozen amputations. You sit in the corner, unseen, unheard, a silent witness. You begin to understand. This is not a man who heals. This is a man who endured. On the desk before him lies a human femur, sawed clean, a specimen for study, its marrow hollowed, its end marked with faint tool scores. Dr. Gray is sketching it, labelling its parts in a tight, precise hand, not for vanity, for memory, for the hope that the next time might be faster, cleaner, less fatal. There are no portraits in this room, no family relics, only anatomy texts, all dog-eared and crumbling. Some written in German, some in Latin, some in English so old it stings the tongue. He finally speaks, his voice rough and low as if rarely used for anything softer than orders. They called me the Angel of Inkerman once. His eyes flick toward the fire. Not because I saved them, because I didn't scream when I cut. You say nothing. The truth doesn't ask for sympathy, only witness. Inkerman. The Crimean War. You picture it, a battlefield soaked in sleet and blood. The cries of men swallowed by wind, the kind of place that breeds men like Gray. Not doctors, but butchers with good intentions. He tells you of those days, not with drama, but with detachment. 400 wounded, 2 sores, a candle, 1 assistant who fainted. No time for names. Only the limbs, stacked like firewood. He recalls them by shape, not by face. Progress, he mutters, pouring a finger of gin into a cracked teacup. They call this progress. He drinks. It doesn't warm him. He leans back in his chair. The light catches a scar above his collarbone, a thin white thread across otherwise weathered skin. He scratches it absently. The body, he says, doesn't lie. It suffers, but it does not lie. The mouth does. The eyes. But the wound? The wound always tells the truth. There is bitterness in his voice. Not at the bodies, at the profession. He speaks of colleagues who boast of cures while their patients rot, of pamphlets that promise miracles but are nothing more than bleach and water, of society ladies who request home visits for hysteria when half the East End dies from infected teeth. He holds up a scalpel to the light, turning it like a jeweller might a gem. This is all we have. This and time. And we are losing both. He sets it down. The fire dies lower. The room grows cold again. Dr. Gray begins to write anew, scratching patient notes with a nib that trembles slightly in his hand. You notice his hands now, thick-knuckled, calloused, but not steady. He is not a cruel man, but neither is he kind. He is what remains when kindness has failed too many times. On the wall behind him hangs a single item of decoration. A pressed violet, framed behind glass, faded to grey, nearly lost in the gloom. You wonder who gave it to him, or if he picked it himself from a battlefield, where it dared to grow among the bone. The thought lingers. He finishes the note, caps the ink, and sets the pen aside. Tomorrow, he murmurs, more to himself than to you, we'll try the ligature first. Less trauma to the artery. It's not an apology. It's not even hope. It's procedure. Routine. He stands, stretches his back until it cracks, and walks to the basin to wash his hands. The water runs brown at first, then pink, then clear. He does not dry them. Instead, he stares at them, fingers splayed against the basin's chipped rim. You wonder what he sees. Blood, surely, but also the ones he could not save. The names he forgot, the hands he let go slack beneath the linen. You leave as quietly as you came. The night is colder now. The fog has thickened. The smell of coal lingers in the street, like a shroud. Behind you, the doctor returns to his desk. The fire gives its last hiss and dies. And somewhere in the silence, a rat scurries across a rooftop, If this chapter stirred something quiet inside you, consider subscribing or sharing the story. Would you have trusted a man like Dr. Gray, with your limb, your life, or your silence? The light in the parlour is dim, filtered through curtains yellowed by time and coal smoke. It is a sickly, sallow light, the colour of fading pages of breath held too long. The air is thick with the scent of camphor and drying lavender, though neither quite masks the deeper smell that lingers here. Iron and damp wool, sweat from restless nights. You sit across from Agnes. Her hands are folded in her lap, fingers knotted like old roots. She is no older than 40, but the lines at the corners of her eyes tell a longer story. 5 children sleep in the next room. 2 in a bed, 3 curled on the floor. The fire has burned low, fed only by what little coal she could spare. Still, she smiles when she speaks, though it costs her. She's had the headaches again, the kind that creep in like fog at dusk and do not lift until morning or not at all. She describes them to you in hushed tones, as if naming the pain too clearly might summon it stronger. A pulse behind the eyes, a nausea that comes like waves on winter sea, a weight at the back of the skull that makes even prayer feel heavy. There are no physicians in this part of town, only the healer. Her name is Mrs. Wren, and she lives 2 doors down in a narrow terrace house where the floorboards sigh and the windows rattle even when the wind is still. You walk there together beneath a sky the colour of tin, past rows of chimney pots and lines of washing that never quite dry. The street is silent save for the distant clop of hooves and the occasional bark of a dog. Mrs. Wren opens the door before you knock. She seems to sense the need before it arrives. Her eyes are sharp, set deep beneath silver hair drawn back with a black ribbon. She does not wear white. No apron, no badge of medicine, only a wool shawl, and a calm that unnerves you more than any surgeon's blade. She ushers Agnes into a wooden chair beside the fire, where a porcelain bowl sits waiting. Steam curls from its surface, fogging the glass of her spectacles. A small cage sits nearby, silent, but pulsing with movement inside. Leeches. Mrs. Wren does not explain. She does not ask permission. She gently draws Agnes's hair back and ties it with a strip of muslin. Then, with hands worn smooth by decades, she dips her fingers into the bowl and withdraws a single leech. It writhes in her grasp, black and gleaming, as she guides it to Agnes's temple. You feel yourself flinch, but Agnes does not. The leech latches with a sound, too soft to name. A half-second later, blood begins to bloom around its mouth, a red star beneath translucent skin. Another is placed on the opposite temple, a third near the base of the neck. Agnes closes her eyes. Mrs. Wren hums, low and tuneless, something between lullaby and lament. She mixes herbs in a small mortar, peppermint, valerian, crushed willow bark, and sets the powder aside. Then she sits back, hands folded, watching the leeches do their ancient work. The minutes pass like candle drips, slow, uneven. You study Agnes. Her brow furrows, then softens. Her hands unclench. Her breath deepens. The pain does not leave, but it loosens its grip. You can feel it, subtle as a shifting wind. The bowl darkens as the leeches swell, their bodies plump and stretch with blood not their own. When they fall away, bloated and languid, Mrs. Wren lifts them gently and returns them to their cage. She swabs the wounds with vinegar and binds Agnes' head with clean cloth. Still, not a word is spoken. Only when the work is done does Mrs. Wren speak at last. "You'll feel worse tomorrow," she says. "Then better, if the Lord wills it." Agnes nods. Her eyes are glassy but calm. She pays in coins wrapped in linen, a small stack, hard-earned, and quickly gone. Mrs. Wren does not count them. She places them in a drawer beside a dried sprig of yarrow and an ivory-handled comb missing its teeth. Outside, the air has turned colder. The fog has thickened. Agnes clutches your arm as she walks, not from weakness, but from something quieter. You realize that what she has just experienced is not medicine, not in the modern sense. It is ritual, faith, desperation given shape. In her mind it is a form of mercy. That night, she sleeps. For the first time in 3 nights, she sleeps, and the silence in her small home is profound, the kind of silence that doesn't. You stand outside a while, watching the smoke curl from her chimney into the starless sky. Somewhere nearby, a baby cries, and a door slams, and a drunkard stumbles down the lane. But inside that house, there is peace. However temporary, you understand now. Medicine, in this part of the world, is not measured in charts or degrees. It is measured in sleep. In the space between 2 migraines, in the breath that comes without trembling. And you wonder, when all else is gone, what comfort would you reach for? A man with a blade? Or an old woman with quiet hands and a cage of leeches? If this story softened something within you, perhaps you'll share it, or let it drift softly into another's dreams. What kind of healer would you have trusted, when trust itself was the rarest cure of all? The fog lifts as morning stretches its pale fingers across the city, revealing a world that feels less like waking and more like remembering. The streets are still slick with last night's mist. The cobblestones glisten in the early light, and from every narrow alley comes the echo of wheels, hooves, and vendors warming their voices like bards before a play. You find yourself drawn to the square not by need, but by noise. It sounds like laughter. It sounds like hope. Banners hang above the stalls like faded prayer flags, printed with promises in curling script. The cure for all ills. Electric elixirs for modern men. Melancholy. Banished. Each sign is brighter than the one before. Paint peels beneath gold leaf. The letters shimmer in the morning haze, and you step beneath them as if entering a chapel built not of stone, but of spectacle. The scent here is unlike the hospitals. No ether, no blood, only peppermint oil, powdered sulfur, and something vaguely sweet like syrup gone slightly sour. The first man you meet wears a velvet coat dyed the red of liver and trimmed with buttons shaped like suns. His voice is smooth, his moustache waxed, and his patter as well rehearsed as any theatre act in the West End. He sells vital tincture of Egyptian bark, harvested, he claims, from the Nile's most sacred groves. It's meant to sharpen the mind and invigorate the spirit. You watch as a young girl drinks a spoonful with trembling hands. She winces at the taste. Her mother thanks the man and presses a coin into his palm. Her eyes hollow but hopeful, they disappear into the crowd like mist into dawn. You read the bottle's label. Laudanum, mostly gin, with a dusting of quinine. It might numb her. It might do worse. Further on, a man in a stovepipe hat demonstrates a galvanic belt. He wraps it around his own chest, cranks a small handle, and jerks backward in a mock spasm. Electricity, he cries. The pulse of progress. The crowd claps. Coins fall into his hat, like rain. Across from him, a woman dressed in white, falsely pure, sells a powder she calls mother's dust. She sprinkles it into water, and drinks it with theatrical ease. For the womb, she says with a wink that curdles the air. For peace of mind. For restful dreams. A man beside you mutters that it's nothing more than ground chalk and morphine. You linger at a table, displaying jars filled with cloudy liquid. Inside each one floats something unnameable, preserved in formaldehyde, or perhaps hope. One jar holds a pig's heart. Another, a withered foot. A third, something vaguely human. Its skin grey and bloated, suspended forever in amber stillness. This, the vendor whispers, pointing to the largest jar, was once a boy who never cried. He drank nothing but spring tonics. You see what it did? You don't believe him. But neither do you. Look away. A child weaves through the crowd with stained trousers and one shoe. He tugs at your coat, offering a flyer printed in ink that smudges your fingers. Madame Bellamy, healer of melancholy, warts, fits, and females' complaints. You crumple it in your palm, unsure why your chest feels suddenly heavy. You pass a booth where a man sells pills stamped with gold foil and false scripture. He presses one into your hand and whispers, "Swallow this, and you'll never feel sorrow again." You hand it back. He only smiles. And above it all, drifting between the barkers and their crowds, is laughter. Real laughter. Not cynical, not hollow, but genuine. Because for a moment, these people believe. They believe in the bottles, in the belts, in the powders and pills. And in this place, belief is stronger than science. You stand at the edge of the square as the sun climbs higher, burning the mist to steam. A horse passes, dragging a cart full of coal. A woman sneezes into her handkerchief, then glances down at the blood in its folds. She folds it quickly, tucks it away, and walks on. You wonder what she bought, and if it will help. You wonder how many in this crowd will be buried before winter. And most of all, you wonder at the power of performance. For in this place, healing is not a practice. It is a play, a costume worn over illness, a song sung over grief. You turn to leave and find yourself at the edge of a stage. A boy stands upon it, face painted white, eyes rimmed in kohl. He juggles glass bottles filled with coloured liquid, their labels peeling. The crowd claps as he tosses them higher. His hands are fast. His face never smiles. One bottle slips. It shatters at your feet, and the scent that rises is familiar. Laudanum! The crowd gasps, then forgets, then moves on. You remain. You realize now that this is not a place of deception. It is a place of desperation made beautiful. The sellers know their cures are false. The buyers know too. But between them is a shared agreement. Let us pretend, for one more day, that we are not dying. And in that agreement, you find something almost sacred. You walk away as the laughter fades behind you. The bottle remains broken at your feet. A sticky pool of amber seeps into the cracks between stones, and the sun, high now, turns it briefly to gold. If this chapter opened your eyes to the strange comfort of illusion, share it with someone who's ever believed in a cure too beautiful to question. Would you have taken the tonic, or watched the crowd and walked away? The room is quiet in the way that only sickness can command. Not the peace of contentment, but the hush that comes when every breath might be the last. The fire has long since burned low, its embers curled like old letters. Ash settles on the hearth in soft grey drifts. Outside, the wind pushes against the shutters, but it cannot come in. Inside, the world has narrowed to a single bed, a single body and a mother sitting beside it, whispering prayers not for healing but for mercy. You stand at the threshold, your hands chilled despite the closeness of the air. The child lies beneath blankets patched with years and frayed at the seams, his skin pale and slick with fever. His hair clings to his forehead like damp leaves after rain. His lips move without sound, murmuring to someone who isn't there. The mother's name is Edith. She has not slept in 3 days. Her eyes are rimmed red, her dress stained at the sleeves where she has dipped cloth into water again, and again and again. She rings one now, presses it gently to the boy's brow, and hums, soft and broken, as if the sound might guide him back. The fever came fast. One day, the boy was laughing in the yard, his boots muddy, his cheeks full of autumn. The next, he was shivering, crying of pains in his belly and heat in his head. They tried the usual: broth, rest, cool cloths, boiled herbs. Nothing worked. By the second night, his eyes no longer met hers. She called for the doctor. He arrives late, well past dusk. You hear him before you see him, the uneven gait of a man who drinks more than he walks, the shuffle of a satchel dragged rather than carried. When he enters, the smell follows: brandy, sweat, damp wool. His cravat is crooked, his shoes are muddy, but his eyes, cloudy though they are, still hold a kind of certainty. He does not smile. He does not speak kindly. He does not ask the boy's name. He presses fingers to the child's wrist, then to the hollow of his neck. He frowns, He mutters about blood, about balance, about the old ways. He unrolls a cloth and takes from it a lancet, a thin blade, sharp as regret. The mother flinches. The boy moans. You watch as the doctor selects a vein at the boy's elbow and slices. It is not deep, but it is enough. Blood wells, dark and slow. It runs down the child's arm and drips onto the sheet. The doctor catches some in a porcelain bowl, blue flowers painted around its rim, as if to mock the life it now holds. The bleeding lasts only a minute. The doctor wraps the arm, mutters again, this time about bile, humours, and the heat of the blood, and then drinks from a small silver flask before departing without further word. The door closes behind him, and the mother is alone again. You sit with her as the hours pass. The boy twitches. He mutters names that no one in the room recognizes. His body burns. His fingers curl and uncurl. The cloth dries and is wet again, over and over. And through it all, Edith stays. She speaks to him of stories from his books, of the time he caught a frog near the mill pond, of the scarf he lost in the wind, of a Christmas long past when he laughed so hard he spilled his cider. Her voice is low and cracked, but it does not break. At one point she sings, not a lullaby, a hymn. You do not know the words, but the melody is like fog over water, gentle, endless, forgiving. And then somewhere between midnight and morning the fever shifts. It does not vanish, but it eases. The boy's breathing slows. His lips stop moving, his eyes open just a sliver, then close again. Not from struggle, Edith does not move. She does not smile. She only presses the cloth one last time and leans her head against the side of the bed. You cannot tell whether she is praying or listening. The fire has died completely now. The room is dark, but not cold. You rise to leave. Outside, the sky has begun to pale. Not yet sunrise, but the promise of it. You turn back once and see them, mother and child, folded together in the hush of survival, not healed, not safe, but breathing. You wonder how many such rooms exist in this city, tucked behind soot-stained bricks and warped wooden doors, where illness is met, not with miracles, but with endurance. And you wonder, too, how many children do not wake. The bowl remains on the table, still stained with the boy's blood, a symbol, a sacrifice, a prayer. You do not know if the bleeding helped. The doctor surely didn't. But in this place, in this time, doing something feels better than doing nothing. Even when the something cut. You walk on, the street empty beneath your boots. The wind has stilled. The city breathes again. And somewhere behind you, a mother watches the rise and fall of a chest smaller than her hopes, and larger than her fear. If this story rests heavy on your heart, or if it reminds you of the silent strength of those who wait beside a bed, share it, or let your thoughts join the stillness. Could you have bled your own child if it meant one more night of hope? The morning has barely shaken off the night when you arrive at the hospital's east wing. The fog still lingers in corners like bruises, clinging to stone and soot alike. You follow the boy again, the one with the nervous hands and the ever-watching eyes. He says nothing as he leads you up a stairwell lit by flickering gas lamps, their flames dancing with each breath of wind from the broken windows. The air grows thicker as you ascend, warmer, sour, anxious. You step into the theatre. It is not a place of performance in any gentle sense. There is no applause here. No velvet curtain. Only steep wooden benches rising in concentric arcs above a pit stained with the memory of too many mornings like this one. The operating table rests in the centre, an island of pale wood, pitted and warped with years of blood and salt. Beside it, trays gleam with metal, their edges catching what little light filters through the tall, narrow windows above. Some of the tools are sharp, others blunt. All are clean in the loosest sense, wiped, not washed, rinsed, not sterilized. The seats begin to fill. Medical students, mostly. Some wear spectacles too large for their faces. Others carry notebooks with margins already stained. A few make nervous jokes in low voices, the kind meant not to amuse, but to armor. The surgeon enters. Not Dr. Gray today, but a younger man named Coulton. His gloves are off, his sleeves rolled, his face blank. He nods to the assistant, who brings forth the patient. A man in his 30s, his skin sallow, his breath short, his leg bound in linen dark with seepage. The man's eyes search the room as he is placed on the table. He says something soft, urgent. No one responds. The assistants strap his arms and legs, and his voice rises to a higher pitch. Still, no one meets his gaze. The assistant leans over and pours a cloth with ether, pressing it gently to the man's nose. He thrashes. "Hold him," the surgeon says flatly. 2 more men arrive, strong-armed and used to this. They pin the patient down. His scream is muffled by the cloth, by the restraints, by the expectation that this must happen quickly. You are seated in the middle row. From here, you see it all. The scalpel, first clean, small. It slices through the linen, through the skin beneath. There is no ceremony, only function. Blood rises immediately, not in a gush, but a thick welling, slow and reluctant. The assistant swabs it with cotton that was white moments ago, then the bone saw. It makes a sound that is hard to describe, part rasp, part scream. The leg does not surrender easily. The patient convulses once, twice, then goes limp, not from unconsciousness, but from despair. His eyes are open the whole time. Students scribble notes, some do not. One watches with tears clinging to his lashes. The bone gives way. The severed limb is handed off like meat at a market. The wound is packed with lint and stitched with haste. Colton does not look up, not even once. It takes 9 minutes. The man is unstrapped and carried away. His face is blank. His mouth is open. His body shakes like leaves on the edge of winter. The next patient is already waiting. You close your eyes, but the sound does not stop. Another leg. A boil, lanced and drained. A mastectomy performed with bare hands and eyes that do not blink. Each procedure is faster than the last. Each student leans in, absorbing not only technique but tolerance. The surgeon works with a rhythm, a grim music. The assistants pass tools like hymnals. This is not healing, it is endurance, ritualized and revered. You open your eyes as the final patient of the morning, a boy, barely 15, is brought forward with a shattered arm. He sobs openly. One of the students laughs, another does not. The saw bites bone again. You rise and leave. The hallway is cooler, darker. You lean against the stone and breathe slowly, as if the air itself might purge what you've seen. But the sound, the rasping, the sobbing, the cheerless rhythm of steel on flesh, it stays with you, not as memory, but as echo. The boy finds you there. He does not speak. He only offers you a cloth. Not for your hands, for your arm. You do not realize until then that you are crying. Not for the pain, but for the silence. For the way the theatre demanded quiet, demanded composure, as if suffering should be studied and never named. You walk back through the corridors where the floors slope slightly, where the blood from the day's work finds its way into cracks, into corners, where students return to their studies and surgeons to their scrawlings. And you wonder, how many screams have soaked into these walls? How many more will come before anyone thinks to ask whether they should? If this chapter unsettled your soul, or left an ache you cannot name, share it with someone who has heard silence, where there should have been mercy. Could you have sat in the theatre and not looked away? The vial is small, no larger than a baby's fist. Its glass is thick, imperfect, the kind that catches light in strange ways. Inside swirls a clear liquid, viscous and still, sealed with wax and a label, etched in careful cursive, chloroform, from Edinburgh. It arrives wrapped in linen and promise. You watch as Dr. Gray unwraps it in the quiet of his study. The fire crackles low. Rain whispers against the window pane. Slow and persistent, he turns the vial in his fingers, reading the label again as if it might speak. There is a frown in his brow, but not of skepticism, only calculation. The silence of a man weighing risk with a scale made of memory. On the table beside him lies a letter, stamped with red wax, a testimonial from a Scottish colleague who claims the substance works wonders upon the patient, bringing about sleep so swiftly it feels like a falling. Gray stares at the words, then at his hands. You return with him the next day to the theatre. The patients are the same, the theatre is the same, but something in the air is different, not in scent, but in intent. Dr. Gray's steps are slower, his eyes sharper. He does not speak as he enters, he simply sets the vial down beside the tray of blades. The room shifts around him. The patient is a young man, no older than 20, with a shattered femur from a fall at the docks. He is pale, sweating, his jaw tight with pain. His name is Thomas. You hear his breath hitch as the assistants begin binding his arms to the table. Dr. Gray uncorks the vial. He pours the chloroform onto a folded cloth, just a few drops measured with the precision of a jeweler. The cloth darkens like a bruise. Then he lowers it toward Thomas's face. The young man flinches, but Gray's voice is steady. "Breathe," he says, "deeply. Let it take you." And Thomas does. One breath, two, a third. Then his body slackens. His jaw goes limp. His eyes roll back, and his chest rises and falls in slow, measured tides. The room holds its breath. Dr. Gray glances at the assistants, then at the students. Then begins. The saw sings its old song again. The leg is severed swiftly, without struggle, without screams. The silence is not empty. It is astonishing. Not a moan, not a twitch. Only the rhythmic rasp of blade on bone and the murmured notes of a surgeon at work. 9 minutes later, it is done. The boy stirs, slowly, groggily, as if waking from a distant shore. He does not remember. And in this forgetting, something new is born. Not kindness, not yet, but control. Later, in the corridors, the students whisper. Some marvel, others shudder. The word miracle is spoken, but Gray does not use it. He retires to his study, sits in silence, and pours a single measure of gin. He does not drink it. He simply stares at his hands. That night, he dreams of Inkerman again, of screams, and for the first time, there is silence in the dream. But as the days pass, you notice something shift. Chloroform becomes more than tool. It becomes doctrine. It is administered not only to amputees but to women in labor, to children with infected teeth, to the mentally disturbed. Some wake confused, others sick. One does not wake at all. You watch as a woman brought in for a dislocated shoulder is put under against her will. Her husband signs a paper with trembling hands. She begs with her eyes, but her mouth is covered in linen, and her limbs soon fall still. She wakes hours later, her shoulder set, but her spirit broken. Dr. Gray does not notice, or perhaps he does, and says nothing. You begin to see how quickly mercy becomes mastery, how silence, once a kindness, can be twisted into submission. There is a night when Lily, his daughter, sits in the doorway of his study, watching him clean his instruments. She asks what it feels like to put someone to sleep with a cloth. Dr. Gray does not answer for a long time. Then, without looking at her, he says, "It feels like closing a door." She waits, and he wipes a scalpel slowly, deliberately, and not always remembering what was on the other side. Outside, the rain has stopped, but the silence remains. In the weeks that follow, the hospital grows quieter, fewer screams, fewer cries, but you feel something hollow behind that stillness, a lack, not a peace. The boy in the gallery no longer flinches. The students grow bolder. One jokes, they should bottle the stuff and give it to wives. Another laughs. Gray does not. He simply prepares the next cloth. And the theatre, once a chamber of suffering, becomes something colder, a room of efficiency. You wonder if this is what progress looks like. Not cleaner, not kinder, just quiet. If this chapter left you pondering the price of silence, pass it along to someone who's ever questioned the power of stillness. Would you choose a scream and the truth, or a silence shaped by someone else's hand? The hospital looms beneath the soft gold of a low morning sun, its windows catching the light in streaks that fail to warm. Inside, behind the eastern stairwell and beyond the formal wards, lies a quiet corner where no charts are kept, no voices raised. It is here that Lily Gray waits, not as a patient nor a nurse, but as something else entirely. She is the surgeon's daughter. She perches near the window, sketchbook balanced on her knees, eyes fixed on the courtyard below, where two orderlies struggle to lift a man onto a wooden gurney. The man's leg is bound. His face is pale. She does not flinch as his moans carry faintly upward, like doves caught in smoke. Instead, she draws quick, sure lines that map the angle of the arm, the sag of the bandage, the way a mouth twists when pain becomes silence. Lily is 13, old enough to know that the world does not always heal, young enough to wish it might. You sit with her in the stillness. She glances at you only once, then back at her drawing. Her hands are nimble, stained faintly with graphite. Her dress is plain. Her hair is tied in a ribbon that has frayed at the edges, more thread than silk. On the desk beside her rests a thick ledger, her father's. When he forgets to lock his drawer, she opens it. She does not read it the way he does. Not line by line, not with the cold detachment of a man recording casualties. She reads between the names. She reads the margins. She traces the curve of letters, the places where ink pulled from a trembling hand. Sometimes she adds sketches, quiet faces of forgotten patients. Not idealized, not embellished, just remembered. Dr. Gray does not know. Or if he does not speak of it. You follow her one afternoon down the staff corridor, her steps quick and certain. She knows where the blood dries fastest, which doors creak, which nurses smile, and which ones do not. She is invisible in this place, unseen, unbothered, and so she sees everything. She stops before a storage room, its door ajar. Inside, a nurse weeps, shoulders shaking, face pressed into her apron. Lily says nothing. She does not comfort. She simply leaves a folded cloth on the floor. By the door, a square of linen embroidered at the edge with small violets. She stitched it herself. In the evenings, she returns to her father's study. He writes. He reads. He drinks. She sits in the corner, sketching by candlelight. She does not interrupt, but he speaks to her sometimes. Small, strange things. Of the time he operated on a child with a coin lodged in her throat. Of the soldier who asked him to cut quickly and never stopped smiling. He tells these stories without weight, as if they are bones he's set down, long healed. But Lily feels their shape. She draws them later when he's gone to bed. One night, while rummaging through the bottom shelf of a forgotten cabinet, she finds a book, Notes on Nursing by Florence Nightingale. The pages are smudged, the binding cracked. She reads it by the light of a single taper, her lips moving silently with each word. It changes something. Not all at once. Not with fire, but like snow melting beneath eaves, slow, unseen. She begins keeping her own notebook. On Sundays, when the hospital chapel sits mostly empty, she creeps in and runs her fingers over the marble names carved into the wall. Patients lost. Some from illness, some from the cure. One night, she sits beside you in the stairwell and opens her sketchbook. She shows you a drawing of a woman's hands, wrinkled, work-worn, yet delicate. She died of sepsis, Lily says. After the surgery, I think she was kind. You ask why she draws them. She shrugs, then whispers, because no one else does. The fog settles heavy outside the windows now. The gas lights flicker and hum. You realize that this child, born among blades and ledgers, carries something her father lost long ago. Wonder. Not naive, not blind, but enduring. She does not yet know how to change the world, but she has begun to imagine it, and that, you sense, is enough to shake the dust from the corners of any empire. If Lily's quiet courage stirred something in your chest, let the story find another heart. Would you have watched like her or dared to draw a softer kind of medicine? The hallway behind the theatre is narrow, low-ceilinged, and always damp. Its walls weep condensation through the mortar, like sweat from fevered skin. The lanterns here are few and far between, and the shadows that gather between them feel thick enough to touch. The floor slopes just slightly, by design to let the water and other fluids run somewhere quiet. This is where they bring the men afterward. You walk the corridor slowly, your boots echoing off stone, as if disturbing something sacred. On either side, wooden cots line the walls, spaced a yard apart. Each is draped in a rough woolen blanket, the color of ash. Beneath them, you catch glimpses of stumps wrapped in linen, of fingers curled into fists, of eyes wide open but seeing nothing. Amputation row. The men do not speak much. Their voices, if they come at all, are slow, slurred, thick with morphine or exhaustion. Most simply lie still, their breaths rising in irregular tides. One man mutters the same word over and over, green, without context. Another bites down on a scrap of leather, long after the pain has passed. You stop beside the bed of a young sailor. His uniform has been cut away, folded neatly at the foot of his cot, though stained with blood at the knees. His left leg is gone from the thigh down. A crude wooden crutch rests against the wall beside him. He stares at the ceiling. I still feel it, he murmurs, not looking at you. The toes, they itch when I dream. You nod. He does not need comfort, only witness. A few beds down, a man with grey hair and missing fingers sings a sea shanty in a voice thin as paper. The lyrics make little sense. He forgets the words halfway through, but the melody lingers in the air, carried gently by the stones. Further along, a man with his arm bandaged to the shoulder clutches a letter. You glimpse a child's scrawl on the back, crayons and crooked hearts. He cannot lift it, so he stares at it from his chest, eyes glazed with something that is not sadness, not quite. Each man here bears more than a wound. They carry the weight of survival. It is a strange burden, this living on. For though they are technically the lucky ones, the ones who left the theatre breathing, they now exist in a space between definitions, not whole, but not gone, not dying, but not unscarred. A nurse passes quietly, her apron streaked with iodine. She does not speak. She changes a dressing, lifts a water glass to parched lips, smooths a brow with a practiced hand. Her face is blank, but you can see the corners of her mouth twitch with each wince, each groan. You wonder how many times she's walked this corridor, how many names she's learned, how many she's forgotten. You linger beside a cot near the far end, where a man lies half asleep. His beard is thick, his hair sweat-matted. He turns to you suddenly, eyes sharp. "I was a runner," he says. You say nothing. Fleetest in the county, ran messages for the militia. Could carry news across 3 towns in a day. He pauses, then lifts the edge of the blanket to show what remains. A single foot, the other leg ending mid-shin. "Guess I'm a crawler now." He laughs. It is not bitter. Not quite. You sit with him for a while. He tells you about his mother's cooking, about a girl he once kissed beneath a cart, about a fox he tried to tame as a boy. None of these things matter now, and yet, in this place they matter more than ever, because they remind him and you that he was more than the wound. And perhaps still is. You stand. The hallway feels longer now. The light dimmer. You pass each bed again, this time slower. You realize that though they lie still, each of these men is still fighting something. The memory of pain, the phantom of the missing limb, the question of who they are now. At the far end, Lily appears. She says nothing, only places a stack of folded blankets on the bench near the wall. She looks at the sailor with the itchy toes, the singer, the letter holder, the runner. Her eyes linger. Then she turns and vanishes again into the deeper shadows. You step outside. The light startles you. It is afternoon now. The sun, pale and low, slips through the clouds like a needle through gauze. A crow caws from a nearby rooftop. Life continues, but behind you in that corridor of blankets and missing pieces, time has slowed. You walk away, not quickly, because the world you return to is louder than it was, and your steps, whole and unnoticed, carry a new kind of weight. If this chapter left an echo in your chest, share it softly, or simply let it sit beside you a while. What do you think is harder, losing a limb, or learning to live with what remains? You first notice it by accident. Not by noise, there is none. Not by light, it always seems dim, no matter the hour. But by the way people avoid looking at it. The stone building stands adjacent to the hospital, modest in size, but heavy in presence. Its door is black, not painted, but charred-looking, as though fire once touched it and never quite left. There is no sign above the entrance. No flowers on the windowsills. No wheel tracks leading up to the stoop. Yet everyone knows what it is. The place where they send the incurables. Dr. Gray refers to it as the convalescent annex, but you've never seen anyone convalesce there. Nurses call it the quiet ward. Porters whisper its true name only after dark. The death house. You follow Lily there one afternoon, though she does not know you're behind her. She carries a book beneath her arm, and a linen parcel tied in twine, bread, perhaps, or clean cloths. She does not flinch as she knocks, then opens the door without waiting for a reply. You step inside moments later. The silence is immediate. Not peaceful, still, thick. Like the air before a storm, before something breaks. The corridor is narrow and lined with doors, each one closed. The walls are bare, save for a single rusted lamp that casts a cone of yellow light. You smell the familiar notes of vinegar, dried flowers, old wood, but also something older, the scent of endings. You trail Lily to a small room near the back. Inside, a woman sits upright in bed, her hands folded neatly atop a grey wool blanket. Her hair is white, her frame delicate, her breath shallow, but her eyes are sharp, piercing. She greets Lily with a nod, then gestures for her to sit. There is no fear here, only time, measured out in whispers, and the slow ticking of a wall clock with a chipped face. The woman's name is Miriam. She once embroidered gowns for nobility sleeves, lined in pearls, bodices sewn in silk. She tells Lily about it in fragments, about the weight of the fabrics, the quiet pride in each invisible stitch, the way a needle glides like wind through leaves when your hands know how to listen. Lily asks gentle questions. You listen. Miriam's voice is cracked with age, but sure, she does not complain. She does not cry. She speaks of a brother who died in India, of a dog she once fed every morning with a heel of rye, of a window that looked over a field full of buttercups. Her lungs are failing now. Consumption, the nurses say. Her coughs are soft but wet, blooming into her handkerchief like crimson petals. She folds them quickly and places them beneath the blanket, ashamed of what her body has become. Still, she smiles. Lily offers her the book poems this time, and reads aloud. Her voice is low, melodic, never rushed. Miriam listens with her eyes closed, mouthing some of the words as if remembering a lullaby from long ago. When the poem ends, Miriam reaches beneath her pillow and pulls out a small object. A pressed daisy, faded and thin, its petals browned by age and time. She holds it out to Lily. For your book, she whispers. Lily accepts it with both hands. You feel something pass between them. Not pity, not charity, but recognition. Miriam sleeps after that. Lily tucks the blanket beneath her chin and sits a while longer, just watching the slow rise and fall of the woman's chest. You both know it may not rise again. Outside the room, the hallway waits. You explore it slowly, peeking into doorways left ajar. One room holds a man staring at the ceiling, lips moving silently in prayer. Another, a young mother with an empty cradle at her bedside. A third, silent, dead, stripped, curtains drawn. A nurse walks past, nodding once. Her steps are soft, her face unreadable. You realize now this place is not where they come to fight. It is where they come to surrender, but not always, sadly. Here, the fight is over. The struggle against the saw, against the needle, against the wrong diagnosis. It ends here, and in its place is something quieter. Acceptance, perhaps, or something deeper still. You return to Miriam's room. Before you leave, she is still breathing. Lily, still reading. You do not speak. You simply take the moment and place it somewhere quiet inside yourself. When you step back into the street, the noise of the city strikes you like sudden rain. A carriage rumbles past. A newsboy shouts headlines. A mother scolds a child for dragging his boots. But the death house stays with you, not in dread, in reverence. Because in a city that bleeds and stitches and bleeds again, there is one place where people are allowed to simply be, to end with dignity, or at least with company. And sometimes, that is the only medicine left. If this story left something gentle in your chest, share it or let it settle quietly beside you. What would you leave behind if you knew your words might be the last? You stand in the corner of Dr. Gray's study, though he does not see you. He is hunched over a table, sleeves rolled high, hands steady as stone. Before him, a row of glass bottles glimmer in the candlelight, clear green, amber, each bearing a hand-lettered label in curling ink. Arsenicum, hydragram, aquafortis. The room smells sharp, metallic, not of rot, but of calculation. This is not surgery. This is alchemy with a conscience. Gray dips a small spoon into a ceramic jar of calomel, mercury chloride, then taps a fine dust into a measuring dish. He hums softly, almost absent-mindedly, as he folds the powder into a paper packet. His hands are careful, practiced. This is the part of medicine no one applauds. The quiet weighing of poison. You ask who the medicine is for. He doesn't look up. A woman, he says. Stage 2 syphilis. Mouth ulcers. Rash. Dizziness. He pauses, then adds, husband brought her in. He said it started after he returned from Bristol. You say nothing. You already know what that means. Dr. Gray reaches for another bottle, arsenic trioxide, and begins preparing a tincture. 3 drops only. A 4th would kill her. He knows this. He's known it for years. But still, he checks the dosage again. Not from doubt, but from respect. Even poison, when handled with reverence, can carry the weight of mercy. He stops only when Lily enters. She lingers at the doorway, eyes drifting over the bottles, the notes, the cold light on her father's face. "Does it work?" she asks. Gray glances up. "Sometimes." And when it doesn't, he doesn't answer. She doesn't ask again. Later, you follow him to the patient's home. It is a narrow room in a boarding house, high above a tannery. The walls sweat with the smell of wet leather and coal smoke. The woman lies in bed, her face thin, her eyes ringed with red. Her skin bears the marks round, pinkish sores across her arms, a cracked lip, fingers that tremble even at rest. Her husband paces near the window, speaking to no one. Dr. Gray crouches by the bed and places the powder on the nightstand. "Take this with milk," he says. She nods, barely moving. He adds, "There will be pain." She looks him full in the face then, and replies, "There already is." Back at the hospital, you meet another patient. A man with twitching hands and grey stains on his gums. His speech is slow, his thoughts meandering. He smiles often, without reason. His breath smells faintly of copper. "I feel better," he tells you. "The pills are working. They said the spots on my back would fade. Do you see them? They're smaller, aren't they?" You do not answer. His teeth are blackening. His eyes are yellowing. He offers you a lozenge. You decline. Later you find Lily in the library, flipping through medical texts, some in Latin, others annotated in the margins by hands long dead. She pauses at a diagram of the periodic table, finger tracing the letters for arsenic and mercury. Her brow furrows, her hand drifts to her necklace. A small glass locket, empty. "You have to hurt them," she says quietly, "to heal them." The question is not directed at you, nor is it answered. You return to the dispensary the next day. New bottles have arrived. Laudanum, strychnine, belladonna, all legal, all administered in appropriate doses. The nurses dispense them like sugar for tea. You begin to see the pattern. The sickness is not the only threat. The cure too comes with a price. In one bed, a woman cries out in her sleep. In another, a child breathes irregularly, pulse fluttering like wings. Beside him, a bottle of soothing syrup lies uncorked. You read the ingredients: opium, alcohol, camphor, a concoction for quiet, not for care. You remember the carnival, the laughter, the snake oil. This is different. More precise, more refined, but no less dangerous. Dr. Gray prepares another dose that evening. He adds tincture of digitalis foxglove for a patient with a failing heart. The extract is fatal in excess. His hand hovers a moment longer over the final drop. You see it, the hesitation, the flicker of uncertainty, like a match struck too softly to catch. He administers it anyway, and for a moment, you think you understand the impossible balance he walks, the line between harm and healing, the need to act when inaction means worse. You leave the room, your steps heavy. Outside, the fog has returned, thick and colourless. A nurse passes you with a tray of draughts, each one labelled, each one lethal, if misjudged by a hair's breadth. And you think, in this age, to be a doctor is not to choose between life and death, but to gamble with poison in one hand and hope in the other. If this chapter weighed in your chest like a slow drop of mercury, pass it along. Would you have taken the medicine, knowing it might kill you before the illness ever could? The door creaks open on rusted hinges, not the polished kind you find in surgical wings or the locked ones of the asylum, but warped oak, swollen from years of steam and sorrow. You step inside and are met with warmth, not of comfort but of too many bodies packed too close, breathing the same air and the same stories. This is the charity ward. It sits on the lowest level of the hospital, farthest from light, from ventilation, from notice. There is no sign on the wall, no fresh linens, no polite knock before entry, only a long room of iron beds, pushed together like pews in a church. No one prays in anymore. The smell hits you first. It is not offensive, not sharp or sour, but dense. The air is thick with boiled barley water, old poultices, unwashed feet, stale breath, and decay. A nurse moves between the beds with a bucket, pouring warm broth into chipped mugs. Her face is young, Her eyes are not. You walk the aisle. Each bed holds a story that no longer fits on paper. The man missing 3 toes from frostbite, who speaks only in whispers. The child with a bandaged neck and eyes that seem to watch everything but never blink. The girl with the cloth-wrapped wrist who hums to herself, not songs but single notes, over and over like a pendulum. You sit beside an old woman in the farthest bed. Her hair is thin, her gown threadbare. She rocks slowly, holding nothing, arms cradled around the ghost of someone she once knew. "Are you here to see Ruth?" she asks. You shake your head gently. "She'll be back soon," she continues. "She's bringing me oranges. She always does. She's good like that." The nurse passes again, pauses, adjusts the woman's pillow. "Ruth's been gone 10 years, she whispers as she moves on. "But she remembers her every day." The woman smiles. Her gums are bare, her voice soft. "Tell Ruth I saved her a slice." You nod. "You will." Further down, 2 men share a blanket. Brothers, perhaps, or just 2 bodies trying to keep warm. One coughs wetly into his sleeve. The other sings in Gaelic, eyes closed, rocking with the cadence of a homeland that doesn't know he's still alive. There is no privacy here, no curtains, no names above the beds. Just bodies, sorted by condition. Burns at one end, infections at the other. A nurse changes a dressing beside you, her gloves stained, her shoulders slumped. She uses carbolic, but there isn't enough to be thorough. She sighs and moves on. You notice then the silence, not of absence but of surrender. No one here cries out. No one complains. Pain is assumed. Hunger is expected. Time passes, not in hours but in shifts of shadow on the wall. You glance at the window. There is none, only a grating above, where light filters through slits in the ceiling. The beams move slowly across the floor, like sundials marking suffering. Dust dances in their path, indifferent. You see a boy, no older than 6, playing with a splintered spoon. He pretends it's a ship, sailing across the stained wool of his blanket. He makes no sound, he does not smile, but he does not stop. At the end of the ward, a priest sits beside a dying man, murmuring Latin in a tone so low it might be mistaken for humming. The man does not respond, but his fingers curl slightly, as if catching the tail end of a prayer. You leave a cup of water on the table. You sit on the bench beside the nurse as she writes names into a ledger with ink that has already begun to fade. You ask her, "How many recover?" She doesn't answer, not because she can't, but because it isn't a question they ask here anymore. Instead, she points to a small, round woman in the 3rd bed. She got better, went back to her sister in Norwich. She pauses. "Last year." You nod, and it feels like fiction. Before you leave, you return to the woman waiting for Ruth. She has fallen asleep, her arms still wrapped around nothing. The nurse gently adjusts her blanket. You help. The ward exhales, and outside, when you reach the courtyard again, the sky is grey, but brighter. Life continues. The carts clatter, the pigeons flutter. A doctor walks by without looking at you. But in that windowless room beneath the ground, they remain. Not nameless, not invisible, just forgotten, until someone sits beside them, even for a moment. If this story settled into your bones, quietly and without fanfare, consider sharing it with someone who's ever waited in the shadows. Would you have stayed a while in the place where no one remembers your name, but everyone shares your silence? It is morning, but the sky does not know it. The clouds hang low over the hospital, flat and colourless, like sheets stretched too tight over a sickbed. Inside, the air is strangely warm, stale with sweat and bleach, but the warmth does not comfort. It suffocates. You follow the nurse through a door marked with no sign. The hinges moan as they open. The corridor beyond is quieter than most. Not silent. No part of this place is ever truly silent, but quieter in a way that feels deliberate, like someone turned down the world. This is the ward for the mind. The walls are painted the same yellow as old paper. The floorboards creak underfoot. The windows are barred, not to keep out the weather, but to keep in what the world does not want back. The first room holds a man who will not speak. He sits on the edge of his cot, shoulders hunched, staring at a crack in the plaster like it holds the answer to something he forgot years ago. A leather strap hangs from the bedpost. His feet are bare, The skin on his knuckles is raw from the constant clenching of hands that cannot let go. You ask what ails him. Melancholia, the nurse replies. He lost his wife, lost his work. Now he's lost his voice. In the second room, a woman sings. Her voice is clear, even beautiful, though the song is unfamiliar, and repeats with no end. She sings as they bind her wrists with soft cloth and lower her into a bath of cold water. She believes she's a bird, the nurse says. The cold reminds her she cannot fly. You move on, heart heavy. The third room is darker. Here, they have begun the bleeding. A boy no older than 17 lies on a table, eyes wild, body bound. The physician, grey-haired, coat spotless, prepares a blade. He speaks softly to the boy, not with cruelty, but with routine. Too much pressure in the brain, he says to no one. We release it through the veins. The incision is small, but the blood runs fast. The boy moans, then sobs, then goes still. The physician seems pleased. He writes a note on a slate and leaves the room without once meeting the boy's eyes. You remain. The blood drips from the edge of the table onto a tin bowl below. You feel the pulse of history in that sound, because this is not new. This has been happening for centuries. Souls misunderstood, pain unspoken, treated as infection. Madness is not an ailment here. It is an embarrassment. Something to be drained, scalded, silent. In the hallway, a woman begins to scream. Not in fear, not in pain, but in fury. It is a wordless scream, torn from the lungs, like a secret too long swallowed. It rattles the glass in the windows. It stops the nurses in their steps. The doctor hurries toward her with a cloth soaked in laudanum. Within minutes, she is quiet again, and the silence that returns is heavier than the scream itself. You pass another room, this one locked. Inside, a man rocks back and forth, eyes fixed on something only he can see. On the walls, he has drawn clocks in charcoal. Dozens of them, none with hands. Time means nothing here. Only sensation, only confusion, only fear. Lily walks these halls sometimes. She leaves apples by the beds. She listens, though she is not allowed to. Once, she tells you, she found a woman here who believed the moon spoke to her. Lily wrote down her dreams. Were they beautiful? You are. Some were, she replies. Some were terrifying, but all of them made more sense than the bleeding. You find her sketchbook later filled with portraits of the patients here, not as they are, but as they were. A man smiling with a child on his shoulders. A woman holding a quill by candlelight. A boy laughing in a field. None of them insane. Only forgotten. You close the book and sit in the corridor as the lamps begin to glow. Someone hums a lullaby. A nurse whistles to herself. The physician returns with new straps. And you wonder, not for the first time, what makes a mind unwell? Is it the grief? The loss? The weight of a world that does not listen? Or is it the world itself? You rise slowly and walk back toward the stairwell. At the door, you look back. The boy who was bled is sleeping now, a thread of blood still crusted at his ear. His hand twitches in his sleep. Not in fear, in longing. If this chapter found its way into your thoughts, quietly or not, share it with someone who's ever felt misunderstood. Would you have trusted the blade, or let your madness be your only voice? Night has wrapped itself around the city like a shawl worn thin by too many winters. The fog clings low to the ground, drifting like smoke between lamplit alleys and echoing cobblestones. The gaslights hum, the gutters hiss. Somewhere far off, a dog barks once, then falls silent. You follow the midwife through streets that maps forget. Her name is Mora. She moves swiftly, a basket in one hand, the other pressed to her shawl to shield her face from the chill. She does not wear a uniform. There is no doctor's coat, no stethoscope, only boots caked in soot, skirts dark with stains, and a quiet, practiced urgency that lets you know this is not her first call of the night. She does not knock. She enters the tenement through a back stair, the steps groaning under her feet like old wood complaining to the moon. Inside, the air is thick with boiled cabbage, coal dust, and the unmistakable scent of blood. Somewhere above, a child cries. A door slams. Feet scurry. You climb to the third floor. A woman lies on a mattress in the corner of a room, no larger than a coal shed. She groans. Not loud, but constant. A sound like grinding stones. Her skin is damp, her eyes unfocused. A girl kneels beside her, no older than 12, dabbing her brow with a rag too dry to help. Mora doesn't speak. She sets down her basket, rolls up her sleeves, and begins. Her hands move like water fluid, certain, worn into this task by years of repetition and reverence. She checks the mother's pulse, listens to the rhythm of breath, places her palm gently on the swell of the belly. The baby is turned. There is no time to fetch a doctor, and even if there were, no one here would want one. The girl watches with wide eyes. Mora instructs her softly. Bring more cloth, boil water, find a candle that hasn't burned too low. The girl obeys. Her hands shake, but she does not cry. You watch Mora work. She coaxes the baby gently, speaking not to the mother, but to the child, whispering as if the child can hear her through blood and bone. Come now, she says. Head first, little one. Come to the light. The mother screams. Once, then again. Mora does not flinch. She braces herself, one knee against the floor, arms steady, breath even. She catches the child as it slips into the world, a soundless blue-skinned thing. For a moment you fear the worst, but Mora does not panic. She clears the mouth, rubs the chest, whispers something so soft you cannot hear it. Then, the baby gasps, cries, fills the room with a sound so pure it wipes away the shadows clinging to the walls. The girl laughs, a short breathless thing, hand clasped to her mouth. The mother weeps without word. Mora smiles, just once. Then the work resumes. The afterbirth. The cleaning, the checking for tears, the binding of wounds not visible from the street. She moves like a tide, washing away pain without promise, only presence. You sit beside the mother as her breathing slows, her eyes blinking back into the world. She reaches for the child. Mora places the baby in her arms. The room is quiet again. Mora packs up her basket, bloodied cloths and cord scissors carefully wrapped, herbs tucked back into paper. She tucks a coin, left on the windowsill, into her pocket, without counting it. You can tell it's not enough. It never is. Before she leaves, the girl stops her at the door. Will you come again? She asks. Mora nods. If I'm called. You follow her back through the dark. She does not speak for a long time. Finally she says, Doctors call us dirty. Say we bring death into the room. She glances sideways. But I've seen death, and I've seen birth, and I've learned to tell the difference. A silence stretches between you, soft as wool. Then, she adds, they don't want us in hospitals. Say we don't know Latin, don't read the ledgers. But I've held more mothers than any of them. And I've buried fewer. You walk with her to the edge of the square where the gaslights flicker and the stones shine with mist. She disappears down a lane that leads to nothing on any map. But you remember her. Not for her coat, not for her name, but for her hands. Sure, steady, and If this chapter left warmth in your chest or tears in your throat, let it be shared. Would you have trusted Mora's hands when no one else would touch you? The rain arrives without warning. It drums against the slate roof of the hospital, gentle but insistent, like fingers tapping a memory long buried. Inside the east wing, the corridors are dim and still, echoing only with the shuffle of shoes and the rustle of pages turned in waiting rooms. In the small alcove near the surgical library, Lily crouches beside an old chest, her skirts tucked under her knees, hair tied back with a frayed ribbon. She has found something. The chest belonged to her mother. It has been left untouched in the corner of Dr. Gray's study for over a decade. Not locked, not hidden, just ignored. Lily opens it slowly, the brass hinges groaning like voices awakened from a long sleep. Inside, beneath yellowed lace and the faint scent of lavender faded with time, lies a bundle of letters wrapped in silk. She pulls one free. The parchment is thin, the ink blurred slightly at the corners. The address is hers, the handwriting elegant, slanted, is her mother's. She reads the date March 18, 1840. 2 weeks before her mother died. Lily sits on the floor, legs crossed beneath her, and begins to read aloud. Her voice is barely above a whisper, but you hear every word. My dearest Lily, if you ever read this, it means you've grown beyond the reach of my arms, but not beyond my love. I write it not knowing if I'll ever hand it to you. There is fever in me. A shadow. The midwife calls it milk fever. Your father calls it nothing at all. The words catch in Lily's throat. She closes her eyes and breathes, then continues. I have seen the ward, the one where women go after birthing. The sheets are not clean. The hands are not washed. No one listens when we whisper of pain. They say it is imagined. They say it will pass. But I can feel it growing inside me. Tight, hot, wrong. Your father means well, but he will not change what he cannot see. Perhaps you will. Lily's hands tremble. The rain beats harder on the glass. You remember her mother died of childbed fever. She was one of many, one of hundreds, who entered the birthing room strong and never came out. No autopsy, no answer. Just fever, delirium, then silence. The letter continues. There is more to healing than cutting and burning. There is care and dignity and the absence of arrogance. I hope one day you'll bring those into rooms your father has only ever entered with knives. Lily folds the letter. She does not weep. Instead, she opens the ledger on her lap. A fresh page. She copies her mother's words into the margins. Not all of them, just the ones that matter. There is more to healing. She tucks the letter into her pocket and rises. Her face is pale, but still, there is a fire in her now, soft but certain. You follow her as she walks to the archive. She scans the shelves, fingers running over volumes thick with dust and dog-eared corners. She pulls a book on infection, one her father never finished, and slips the letter inside, between chapters on puerperal fever and germ theory. Not to hide it, to plant it. A seed in pages still read by hands that may yet listen. That night, she returns to her room and opens the wooden box where she keeps her mother's hand mirror, the one with the silver frame worn dull by years. She stares into it, not at herself, but at something deeper, something remembered. Then, quietly, she begins to sew. A clean linen square, her initials stitched at the edge. Below them, one word, listen. The next morning, she places it on her father's desk, folded beside his scalpel tray. She leaves no note. She knows he may never see it. But it doesn't matter, because she has begun, and in that beginning her mother lives on. If this chapter stirred something lost in you, something half-remembered and wholly true, let it pass gently into another's hands. Would you have opened the letter or left it unread, like all the warnings buried in silence? The gaslight flickers in the library's far corner, casting long shadows across rows of worn leather spines. Most visitors here come for anatomy texts or surgical diagrams, books filled with the clean, cold language of science. But tonight, the room holds something softer. Lily sits alone at a long oak table, her fingers resting on a slim blue volume. Notes on Nursing by Florence Nightingale. The book is old, its edges frayed, its cover sun-faded, but the words inside shine. She reads slowly, tracing the lines aloud in a whisper. The very first requirement in a hospital, she recites, is that it should do the sick no harm. Her eyes linger on the sentence. You watch her shoulders lift, then settle. It is not a grand revelation. It is something deeper. Permission. She copies passages into her notebook, her handwriting careful, deliberate. Cleanliness. Fresh air. Observation over assumption. Care as precision, not as softness, but as science of the heart. The library closes before midnight, but Lily does not leave. Instead, she waits, and when the doors open again at dawn, 3 other women join her. They nod without speaking. One is a laundress from the fever ward, one a nurse's apprentice, the third a young widow who lost a child to sepsis last spring and never left the hospital. They gather around the table like conspirators, because they are, not against medicine, but against its blindness. They bring more books. Pamphlets, clippings from foreign journals. One shows a drawing of a hospital ward in Crimea. Clean cots, open windows, women in white moving like tides through the rows. Florence Nightingale's name is whispered like a psalm. They begin their own logbook, not of procedures, but of conditions. Which beds get changed, which windows stay open, which patients recover faster in light. They record everything. They call it the code, though no one speaks it aloud, because this work is quiet and dangerous. Not by law, but by pride. Dr. Gray does not know. Most of the doctors don't, and those who do dismiss it. Sentimentalism, one calls it. Women's work. Florence and her flock, another mutters, before returning to his whiskey. But the code grows. Lily gathers charts from discarded piles. She tracks cases of infection post-surgery and traces them to linen reused, to hands unwashed, to scalpels set down on unclean trays. She plots them on paper. She shows the others. They do not gasp. They nod. And then they act. In the fever ward, one nurse insists on wiping every bed rail with vinegar twice a day. In the maternity hall, another opens windows during delivery, even in winter. In the hallway, a girl places bowls of lavender beneath beds to calm patients whose minds will not rest. The men scoff. The women keep going. They meet in hidden corners now, near the laundry, behind the kitchens, in the chapel before sunrise. They trade remedies, ideas, lists. Lily teaches others to boil cloths, to soak bandages in salt, to recognize the smell of infection before the fever ever spikes. You watch this unfold, not like a revolution, but like roots creeping beneath stone. No banners, no battles, only change. One evening, you see Lily leave a note tucked inside a medical journal, borrowed by a junior surgeon. It reads simply, "Ask why he died." No signature, just ink and a question. You pass the garden one morning and see the youngest of the group, kneeling beside the path, planting chamomile. She doesn't explain. She doesn't need to. They are not waiting for permission. They are building something. A hospital within a hospital. Not in bricks, not in names, but in hands, in habits, in a belief that mercy is measurable, that care can be charted, and that science without compassion is just another form of cruelty. The code spreads, and you begin to wonder how much of medicine was built by these quiet women, moving unseen through hallways, planting flowers in the dirt of empire. How many hands were steadied not by morphine, but by touch? How many wounds healed, not by the blade, but by listening? You leave the library just before the lamps are extinguished. Lily remains behind, copying the next line. 150 years hence, it reads, it will be thought a strange thing that hospitals were ever dangerous places. She smiles. She underlines it twice. If this chapter sparked quiet hope in your heart, let it pass gently onward. Would you have joined their circle, planting change in silence, beneath the gaze of those who refuse to see? The letter arrives on a Wednesday. Its paper is crisp, the seal foreign pressed with a French crest, and the faint scent of smoke. Lily finds it on her father's desk, half buried beneath ledgers and scalpels, ignored like a draft that slipped beneath the door. She reads it standing up, eyes narrowing with every line. It is from Paris. Inside are the findings of one Louis Pasteur, recently presented to the Academy of Sciences. The theory is simple, radical. Illness is not spontaneous. It has cause. Invisible things, germs, float in the air, live on hands, rest on tools. They enter wounds. They multiply. They kill. Dr. Gray does not read it. He sets it aside, unread, dismissed with a wave of the hand. Speculation, he mutters. Airborne demons and phantoms. But Lily keeps the letter, and she believes. That evening she conducts her own experiment. You follow her into the theatre, long after the surgeons have gone and the floor has been mopped. But not well. She brings with her a basin of hot water, a bar of carbolic soap, a set of gloves, and a vial of gentian violet dye. She stains one pair of gloves, then washes another. Then she touches the operating table, the cloth, the tray. And on a separate sheet of paper she presses her fingertips purple, marked, undeniable. Beside them, the unstained prints. She repeats the test, in the nurse's station, then in the maternity hall, then in the mortuary. By morning she has a book of fingerprints, blotched and scattered, each one a silent indictment. She brings it to her father's study. He glances at it once, then returns to his case notes. "You're wasting time," he says. She stands in silence. Then calmly, she lays a knife beside him. "It has not been washed." He looks up sharply. "You would not operate with this," she says. "But you would with those hands." He says nothing. That night, Lily gathers the circle again. She shares the experiment. She shares the paper. She teaches them the word, germ. It is not accepted easily. Some resist. Some worry. But all begin to change. The laundry staff begins to boil linen longer. Midwives start wearing gloves, even in back alleys. The fever ward doubles its vinegar stock. And in the surgical prep room a nurse insists on washing her hands after every patient. The surgeons mock her, but she keeps washing. You begin to see it. The quiet panic. Patients are asked to cover their mouths. Visitors are limited. More windows are opened. A jar of soap appears at the entrance to the wards, unmarked, but used. Then, the shift. A girl with a punctured leg avoids infection. A boy survives a minor operation without fever. A woman delivers her child, and lives. The numbers change. Slowly, but undeniably. Dr. Gray notices. He reviews his cases, cross-references infection rates. He sees Lily's fingerprints in the margins of everything, violet and defiant. He does not speak of it, but one morning, you find him scrubbing his hands over the basin, before surgery, quietly, methodically. Lily sees it too. She doesn't smile. She just nods, and keeps working. One afternoon, a doctor from Vienna visits. He brings his own paper, his own theories, antiseptics, instruments boiled in alcohol, bed sheets replaced daily. He cites Pasteur, Semmelweis, Snow. A few surgeons roll their eyes, but some stay after the lecture and listen. You begin to sense a tremor in the stone. Not a crack, but a shift. The certainty that once wrapped this hospital like iron. This is the way, and no other, is beginning to give. You remember the theatre filled with screams. You remember the surgeons shaking hands. You remember the stench, the silence, the blood. Now you see gloves. You smell vinegar. You hear questions. Not all of them are answered, but they are asked. And in that asking, the air changes. Just slightly. Just enough. If this chapter made you breathe differently, slower, deeper, pass it on. Would you have believed in the invisible, even when the world told you it wasn't there? Dawn breaks quietly over the hospital roofline, pale light catching the frost on the slates, painting the city in dull silver. You pass through the courtyard just as the gaslights flicker out. The world exhales. Another night survives. Inside, the maternity ward is still. Not empty, never that, but hushed. A single candle burns on the windowsill, its flame wavering beneath a cracked pane. The air is cool, sharper than usual, tinged faintly with vinegar and fresh soap. It is a good scent, a clean scent. You breathe it in, then follow it down the corridor. At the end you find Lily. She is kneeling beside the farthest bed, sleeves rolled, apron damp, arms deep in work. In her hand is a rag, dipped in carbolic. She scrubs the wall, not frantically, not hurriedly, but with rhythm, with care. She does not look up. There is no audience here, no physician watching, no nurse to commend her. Only this wall, this corner, this quiet determination. You stand beside her, silent. The bricks are stained with years of stories, some tragic, some merely tired. The wall has seen women die, quietly, with torn bodies and wide eyes. Some from fever, some from what came before it, some from nothing anyone could name. Lily wrings out the cloth and begins again. She moves from wall to window frame, from window frame to bedpost, from bedpost to basin. She washes everything, every surface, every handle, every inch of wood, touched by human breath. Her motions are not theatrical, they are prayerful. You notice the scratches on her hands, tiny welts from scrubbing raw skin at the knuckles. You think of her mother, of the letter, of the line she copied. The very first requirement in a hospital is that it should do the sick no harm. She never said it out loud, but here it is, made flesh. A nurse enters behind you, carrying clean linens. She watches Lily for a long moment, then sets the bundle down and begins wiping the railings with a cloth of her own. Another joins, then another. No words are exchanged. Only buckets. Only soap. Only the soft sound of water moving over wood. The ward, long neglected, begins to shine. Not brightly, but honestly. The light from the tall windows falls differently now. Shadows recede. Dust lifts and vanishes. The smell of old death fades beneath the quiet resolve of hands at work. Later that morning, a woman gives birth in this room. She is poor. Frightened, she holds no husband's hand, only her own knees. Her cries are sharp, but brief. The child comes swiftly. The cord is tied. The infant wrapped. No fever follows. No heat behind the eyes. No ache in the spine. No sudden bleeding. Days later, in the dark, just sleep and breath. Lily watches from the doorway. She does not enter. She only lingers a moment longer than necessary, then returns to her bucket. By afternoon, a chalkboard is placed by the nurse's station. It reads, "No patient dies from dirt." No one signs it, but the handwriting is hers. Dr. Gray walks past it without speaking. But that evening, you find a brush and soap in his study, not for a patient, for his own hand. You begin to see it spreading, not like fever, but like light through old drapes. A surgeon scalds his tools before use. A nurse throws out linens she once would have kept. A porter empties chamber pots without being asked. No announcement was made. No rule written. Only example. Only repetition. Only silence. Lily does not lead with speeches. She leads by washing. Again and again. Even when her hands split. Even when her back aches. Even when no one thanks her. You watch her long after others have gone to bed. She sits by a window, soaking a cloth in a basin. Her eyes are closed. Her hands are still. But you know that tomorrow she will begin again. Because sometimes the most radical act in the world is simply to care. Without reward, without recognition, without noise. Only soap, only water, only faith in something better. If this chapter softened something quiet inside you, let it ripple outward. Would you have kept scrubbing when no one believed it mattered? The frost has returned. It climbs the corners of the windows like ivy made of ice, curling into delicate whorls no hand could ever trace. Inside Dr. Gray's study, the fire has long since died. The coal sits still and blackened in the grate. The chair remains turned toward the hearth. But the man in it no longer breathes. You are the one who finds him. His coat is still draped over the backrest. His boots, lined neatly beneath the desk. In his lap lies a book. Florence Nightingale's, its spine cracked, corners dog-eared. His spectacles are still perched on the bridge of his nose, one lens smudged with the oils of a final touch. There is no violence in his passing. No struggle, no mess, only stillness, only the soft hollow sound of something ending. You sit in the quiet and listen to the room breathe without him. There is no note. But you see the order he left behind, papers stacked, scalpels wiped, charts annotated with care he rarely showed aloud. His gloves hang from the edge of the wash basin, drying from a final cleaning. Lily enters without speaking. She kneels beside the chair and rests her hand on his knee. For a long time, neither of you move. The man is gone, but the shadow he cast still stretches across the wards. She rises at last and covers his body with the woolen shawl that once belonged to her mother. Then she takes the book from his lap, closes it, and tucks it under her arm. The next morning she arranges for a quiet burial. No procession, no public mourning, only a pine box, a handful of colleagues, the priest from the local chapel. You and Lily walk behind the cart as it creaks over frost-slick stones toward the cemetery at the edge of town. The wind cuts through your coat like a reprimand. At the grave, Lily does not offer eulogy, only this: he believed in the knife. I believe in what comes after. She kneels once more, this time not in grief, but in release, and places a single item atop the closed coffin, a white cloth, clean, folded, stitched with the word her mother once taught her. Listen, the gravediggers begin their work. You turn to see the city rising behind you, chimneys coughing smoke, windows catching light, the hospital roof already touched by the weak sun of a changing season. Back inside the wards, things do not stop. They never do. A woman in the West Wing begins labor. A man with a cracked skull is carried in from a factory. A child arrives with bruises too old to be from any fool. The world continues its steady shatter and repair, but something has shifted. You pass by the theatre, empty now, its benches gathering dust. A new notice hangs on the door. No observers, surgery is not spectacle. You see a young doctor in the hallway, scrubbing his hands longer than required. You see a nurse changing bedpans before being asked. You see charts where recovery is not only measured in days but in dignity. The changes are quiet, but they stay. Lily walks through it all with calm steps and open eyes. Her hair is pinned neatly now, her apron always spotless. In one hand she carries a notebook, in the other, a fresh bar of soap. In her office, once her father's, she keeps two portraits on the shelf. One of her mother, one of the man who taught her the weight of silence. She does not hate him. She understands him. But she does not follow him. Not anymore. You watch her that evening from the stairwell as she stands by the window, the same frost tracing its ancient path across the pane. She exhales once, long and slow, her breath blooming briefly on the glass. Then she turns away. She has work to do. The old ways are buried now, not vilified, not erased, but laid to rest. And over that grave, something gentler has begun to grow. If this chapter brought you peace, even a little, pass it onward. Would you have let go of what you were taught, to begin again in quiet defiance? It is morning, not the dim, reluctant dawn the hospital once knew, but a light that rises clear and gold, brushing the world awake with warmth. The city still smokes, the air still carries soot, but today you feel something else moving through the halls. Not death, not ether, air, just air. You walk slowly past the gates, now painted and mended, their iron no longer rusted through with indifference. The wards hum with soft motion, linens being changed, windows opened wide, nurses whispering instead of shouting. It is not quiet because of grief, it is quiet because no one is afraid. The floors have been scrubbed so well that they gleam, the old stains buried beneath layer after layer of effort and care. Someone has planted marigolds beneath the southern windows. They bloom boldly, defiantly, their scent clinging faintly to the breeze. Lily stands at the end of the corridor, sunlight falling in soft ribbons across her shoulders. She holds a chart in one hand, a pencil in the other. She walks slowly, stopping at each bedside, not just to observe, but to speak, to touch a wrist, to tuck a blanket, to smile. No task too small, no patient too low. You follow her through this new place, though it looks so much like the old. In the fever ward, the beds are farther apart. Fresh water sits at every table. The nurses have clipboards now, records, charts, observations once dismissed as sentimental now rendered into science. Infection rates have dropped. Recovery times short, but numbers are not what you feel. What you feel is space, breathing room. You walk past the operating theatre. The benches are gone. In their place, a curtain drawn across the window. No more observers. No more cheering students watching pain become performance. Now, only the patient, the surgeon, the stillness. The instruments lie in neat rows beside the basin, glinting like sleeping tools, not weapons, not relics. You pass the wall where Lily once scrubbed alone. Now there are prints along it. Not bloodstains, handprints, dipped in ink. A tradition begun weeks ago. Every staff member, after their first month of service, leaves their mark. Not to be praised, but to remember that change does not come from one person or in one night. It comes from many, repeated, quiet, relentless. You see Lily's print at the top, wider, darker. In the maternity wing, a woman holds her child in peace. No fear behind her eyes. No fever waiting in her blood. She is clean. So is the child, and the midwife who attended her wears gloves. A crisp apron, a braid of rosemary tucked behind her ear. More a student. You smile. In the garden, a girl reads aloud from Nightingale's notes to a group of apprentices seated on the grass. Some are barely older than children. Some wear uniforms. Some do not. They listen with furrowed brows, heads tilted toward the light. They are learning, not just medicine, but care. You find Lily again at dusk. She sits beneath a tree that did not grow here 10 years ago. It was planted after the last frost, and it has taken root stubbornly, its bark cracked but proud, its leaves fluttering with the new breeze. She holds her mother's mirror in her lap. She looks into it, then closes it softly and sets it aside. When she turns to you, she says nothing. She does not need to. You stand together, the wind rising, the sky turning orange at the edges. Somewhere, a window opens with a gentle creak, and for the first time in a long time, you breathe. Not through gauze, not through ether, not through pain or mourning. Just air, clean, cool, alive, as the final breath of this journey leaves the page. I thank you for walking its long, quiet corridors. If it brought you peace, share it gently. Subscribe if you wish to return to places where history still lingers in the air. soft and human, waiting to be remembered. Which chapter stayed with you the most, and why? As the last shadows lift from these soot-stained halls, I hope you carry with you the quiet strength of those who endured. If this story stirred something in your bones, subscribe, return, or share it with someone who dreams of gentler times. Until next we meet, may your breath be easy, and your night be still. What part of this story stayed with you the most? The scalpel, the silence, or the soul who dared to wash her hands?